Okay, so you sent us this story about Ruth, and wow, there's loyalty strategy and some really bold moves in this one.
Yeah.
We're going to ancient Bethlehem, diving into the book of Ruth, chapter 3.
Okay.
To try to unpack what is happening here.
Yeah.
You've got Ruth, a young widow, and Naomi, her mother-in-law.
Right.
They're struggling, and their hope seems to be Boaz, a wealthy landowner related to Naomi's late husband.
Yes.
It's harvest time, and the threshing floor becomes the setting for some pretty high-stakes action.
It's all about context here. It's not just a love story.
Right.
It's about survival. These women are in a very precarious position.
Yeah.
And Naomi, she comes up with this plan for Ruth. That's pretty daring.
This plan is so audacious. I mean, I have to admire Naomi's strategic mind here.
Yeah.
She tells Ruth to go down to the threshing floor at night, wait for Boaz to fall asleep, uncover his feet, and lie down next to him.
Wow.
I mean, talk about a bold move.
So this is really fascinating because it kind of pushes the boundaries of what was considered appropriate at the time. To understand this, we need to kind of consider the cultural context of ancient Israel. Marriage and family were everything.
Yeah.
A woman's security depended on it. But for Ruth to approach Boaz like this, that was highly unusual.
I am struck by Ruth's willingness to go along with this. What do you think was going through her mind? Was it purely duty to Naomi?
Yeah.
Or was there like an element of trust in a higher plan?
Yeah.
And then what about Boaz?
Right.
Imagine being him, like waking up to find someone at your feet.
Yeah. Talk about a rude awakening.
Yeah.
It's a pivotal moment in the story.
Yeah.
Boaz wakes up startled, sees Ruth, and asks, "Who are you?" And Ruth responds directly, "I am Ruth, your servant. Spread the corner of your garment over me, since you are a guardian redeemer of our family."
She's not beating around the bush.
No.
So what's this guardian redeemer business all about?
Think of it like a social safety net, but with family ties woven in. It's not just about inheritance. It's about making sure no one falls through the cracks and preserving family honor. Pretty different from today's world, right? So in ancient Israel, if a man died without a son, a close relative, a kinsman redeemer, had an obligation to marry the widow and take care of the family line.
So Ruth is basically calling on this ancient tradition, asking Boaz to step up.
Precisely.
Wow.
And Boaz's response is really telling. He's not angry. He's impressed. He says, "The Lord bless you, my daughter. You have shown more kindness now than before, for you have not sought to marry one of the young men, whether rich or poor."
He seems to genuinely admire her.
Yes.
It's not just about duty for him.
Right. He recognizes Ruth's character. She's not looking for a handout or an easy way out, but there's a twist. Boaz tells Ruth that there's another relative who's actually closer in line to be the kinsman redeemer.
So he can't just say yes right away. What a cliffhanger.
Right.
What does Boaz do then?
He acts with honor and generosity.
Oh.
He can't marry Ruth immediately, but he gives her a substantial amount of barley to take back to Naomi.
Oh, wow.
It's like he's saying, "I'm committed to helping you, regardless of what happens next."
So Ruth goes back to Naomi, and that's where chapter 3 ends.
Yeah.
We're left wondering, will this other relative agree to marry Ruth? Will Boaz get his chance? This is like a soap opera in ancient Bethlehem.
It really is.
I am definitely hooked.
This story, it's more than just a romantic drama.
Yeah.
It raises some big questions about social structures and the roles of women in that society.
Yeah. How much agency did women have in ancient Israel? And we tend to picture them as being pretty powerless.
Well, it's more nuanced than that. While they didn't have the same legal rights as men, women played vital roles.
Yeah.
In their families and communities, they managed households, raised children, and often contributed to the family's income.
Like Ruth working in the fields to support herself and Naomi. That takes resilience, especially as a widow in a patriarchal society.
Absolutely. Ruth isn't just waiting for a man to rescue her.
Right.
She takes initiative, cleverly leveraging cultural customs to secure her future.
Yeah.
This might surprise some people who assume women in that era were entirely powerless.
And the kinsman redeemer custom.
Yeah.
It went beyond just romance, right? I mean, what were the social and economic implications?
Right. It was about social responsibility.
Okay.
Ensuring the well-being of widows and orphans. It preserved family property and maintained social order within the community.
So it wasn't just about finding a husband for Ruth.
Right.
It was about protecting her and Naomi's future. Still, Naomi's plan.
Yes.
It was pretty risky.
Yeah.
What do you think she was thinking when she came up with this whole scheme?
Well, remember, Naomi was desperate.
Right.
She had lost everything.
Yeah.
This was a last-ditch effort to secure their future.
Yeah.
She knew Boaz was a good man, someone who might honor the spirit of the tradition, even if Ruth's approach wasn't entirely conventional.
And it worked at least in getting his attention and admiration.
Yes.
Yeah.
Boaz's reaction to Ruth's proposition really speaks volumes about his character. He could have rejected her.
Yeah.
But instead, he responds with kindness and respect. He even praises her for not pursuing younger men.
Right.
Which suggests he sees her maturity and strength.
So even though he can't immediately agree to marry her, there's definitely a spark there.
Yes.
And sending her back with barley shows his commitment to helping them no matter what.
Exactly. He embodies the qualities of a true kinsman redeemer, even before he officially takes on that role.
Yeah.
He's compassionate, honorable, and committed to doing what's right.
But for Ruth and Naomi, it must have been a nerve-wracking wait. They took a huge risk, and now they're kind of at the mercy of this other relative and Boaz's actions.
Yeah. I imagine they're feeling both hope and anxiety. It's a time of uncertainty and vulnerability. You know, they've planted a seed, so to speak, but they don't know if it will bear fruit.
It's like they're standing at a crossroads, their future hanging in the balance. They've done all they can, and now they just have to trust in a process that's largely out of their control. You know, that reminds me of a time when I had to take a huge risk.
It's a universal human experience, isn't it?
Yeah.
We all face situations where we have to take a leap of faith and then just surrender to the outcome, whatever it may be.
It's amazing how this ancient story about a widow, a threshing floor, and a complicated marriage custom can feel so relatable.
I know.
Even today.
Yeah.
We've all been there, haven't we?
Yeah.
Summoning our courage, making tough choices, and then waiting with bated breath to see what happens next. But there's another layer to this story, right?
Yes.
Doesn't Ruth become an ancestor of Jesus?
You're right. If we fast forward a few generations, we discover that Ruth and Boaz's great-great-son is King David.
Wow.
From whose line Jesus descended.
Wow, that's incredible. A Moabite widow who took a bold risk ends up being part of the lineage of one of the most important figures in history.
It speaks to the unexpected ways that seemingly insignificant events can ripple through time and have a profound impact. Ruth's story, which began as one of survival and family loyalty, becomes part of a much larger narrative.
So even though she was an outsider, a foreigner in the land of Israel, her actions had consequences that went far beyond her immediate circumstances.
Absolutely.
Okay, I need to know what happens next. Will Boaz overcome the obstacles and marry Ruth? And how does all of this connect to the bigger picture?
For that, we need to delve into chapter 4, and trust me, you won't want to miss it.
Okay, we're back, and I am on the edge of my seat. Last we left off, Boaz was determined to do things right by Ruth.
Yes.
Even though it meant involving this other relative who was closer in line. So what happens next? Does Boaz get to be the hero and sweep Ruth off her feet?
Well, he's certainly persistent. Chapter 4 starts with Boaz going to the city gate.
Yeah.
Kind of like the public square back then to sort things out legally. He finds the other relative and lays it all out. Naomi's selling a piece of land, and as the kinsman redeemer, this guy has first dibs, the catch. He also has to marry Ruth.
Okay, so now it's this other relative's turn to be put on the spot.
Yeah.
I'm dying to know how he reacts.
Yeah.
Is he thrilled about potentially marrying Ruth and getting some land out of the deal?
It's interesting. Initially, he seems keen on the land. But when Boaz mentions marrying Ruth as part of the package deal, this relative gets cold feet. He says, I cannot redeem it for myself, lest I impair my own inheritance.
Wow, that's a real letdown.
Yeah.
Sounds like he's more concerned about his own wealth than honoring the family obligation.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, what were the social pressures like back then? Was it common to put personal gain ahead of duty?
It's a question worth pondering, but for Boaz, this is his moment.
Yeah.
Right there in front of everyone. He steps up and declares, I have bought from the hand of Naomi all that belonged to Elimelech, and all that belonged to Chilion and Mahlon, also Ruth the Moabite, the widow of Mahlon, I have bought to be my wife, to perpetuate the name of the dead in his inheritance. It's a pretty bold move, making it so public.
Talk about seizing the opportunity. Not only does Boaz get the girl,
right,
but he ensures the family's legacy will continue. It's pretty heartwarming to see him so committed to Ruth and honoring her late husband's memory. What's the crowd's reaction to all of this? I'd imagine there's some juicy gossip happening.
Actually, the response is overwhelmingly positive.
Oh, wow.
The people at the city gate bless Boaz and Ruth, saying, "May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your house like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the house of Israel." So they're basically wishing them a successful marriage that will strengthen the entire community.
That's a beautiful sentiment.
Yeah.
They're not looking down on Ruth for being a Moabite
Right.
or a widow. Instead, they're welcoming her into the fold. So Boaz and Ruth get married. The crowd approves. Are we talking happily ever after at this point?
The story focuses on more than just romantic happily ever after. We learn they have a son, Obed.
Oh, yeah.
And this is where it gets really interesting. Obed becomes the father of Jesse, and Jesse, of course, is the father of King David.
Hold on. Are you saying that Ruth, this brave Moabite widow, ends up being the great-grandmother of King David? That's a plot twist I did not see coming.
It's mind-blowing, right? Her story goes from one of loss and uncertainty to being woven into the grand narrative of history. It makes you think about those pivotal moments in your own life.
Yeah.
The decisions that seemed small at the time but set you on an unexpected path.
This whole deep dive has been incredible.
Yeah.
We started with a daring plan at a threshing floor and ended up exploring themes of loyalty, social change,
Right.
and the surprising ways our lives connect to bigger events. What stands out to you as the most powerful message of the Book of Ruth?
For me, it's the message of hope and unexpected redemption.
Yeah.
Ruth, an outsider who went through so much hardship, is embraced by the community and becomes a key figure in history. Her story reminds us that even when things seem bleak, there's always potential for things to turn around in extraordinary ways.
It's a powerful reminder that everyone has a story, and sometimes those stories can surprise us.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking us on this deep dive into the Book of Ruth. It's been enlightening.
My pleasure. I hope it inspires our listener to look for those surprising connections and unexpected turns in their own lives. You never know what fascinating stories are waiting to be discovered.